Welcome to the Fan Podcast, the series where we dive deep into the creators shaping our cultural landscape today. On this episode of the Fan Podcast, we are delighted to welcome an artist whose music creates an entire universe within the streets of New York City. Loren Beri's album, Libby's Ghost, builds a rich alternate reality through synth pop anthems and character-driven storylines. His music has been described as lush, expansive psych pop at its richest and most tantalizingly melodic, drawing comparisons to Of Montreal and featuring collaborations with indie pop veteran Kishi Bashi and percussionist Mauro Rafosco. From his satirical hit, My Brooklyn is Better Than Yours, which is a personal favorite of mine, to the cosmic journey of Greta's Inn, Loren creates vivid narratives that blend fiction, reality, and the mythology of New York. Please welcome Loren Beri. How's it going, buddy?
Thank you. That's quite an intro. It's an honor.
Yeah, it was so great to have you perform at one of our FAMs the other week. We're always excited to not just have performers play our shows, but also dive deep into their backstory and history. One of the things that I would love to know, because it's one of my favorite singles, but your single, My Brooklyn is Better Than Yours, was a satirical take on the city and led to your debut EP. You mentioned it almost started as a joke song, and that made you crack up. Can you tell us more about that moment when you were writing it and how that evolved?
Sure. In college, I was taking playwriting classes because it ended up being my concentration. And I had this professor named Ken who had this thing about bringing what you've written as an assignment into class, and without putting your pencil or pen down the entire class, stream of consciousness, write a completely different version of the same thing you brought in for real, but now make it bad. And that was his advice. And I think that whole song is a product of me kind of feeling like I hadn't been nudging the creative needle in me or something. And I felt it was from like a slight, like kind of a place of feeling down a bit, actually. And I thought it was actually a really dumb song. And I was cracking up laughing, and I thought, well, I'm not going to record this. This is like, I don't know, this is for a comedy sketch or something that I'm never going to make. But then I started playing, played it for a couple friends, or like at a campfire one time, just traipsing into that cliche of guy with a guitar by a campfire one time. And friends liked it. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll record it. But yeah, but as for how it started, about like that.
I really love the specific assignment of, but make it bad. And can we tease that apart a little bit? Like, where does that come from? Like, how does quote unquote, but make it bad really expand the scope of creativity? Because we're always trying with art to make it great and make it perfect, but there's something almost like freeing with this little nudge of making it bad.
Totally. I think that what's freeing about it is it gets you out of the unconscious mindset of simply just trying at all, like trying to keep it in the lane of what you think of intellectually as good. So you like these 10, 20, 30 artists who are like really looming large at the front and the back of your psyche. And every little thing you do, you're consciously or not analyzing almost by the sort of aesthetic metrics that you've accumulated, I think. So, and judging based on those artists who loom large for you. So I think intentionally making it bad is just throwing out the unconscious pressure to fit in that lane, because our lanes they're imaginary. They're not terribly real. I mean, like, they're useful to some extent, but yeah. So I think that's my thought on that.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting, because so much of making art comes with this little voice in your head that is the person judging you, right? We are always sort of like judging ourselves when we're making anything. And by saying make it bad, it's almost like freeing yourself of that little like judgmental voice inside of you, if you will, so that you can be truly at play.
Yeah. How's that experience for you? Do you ever Do you approach it in the same way for Gwen songs? No.
I try to make it perfect every time, and it turns out like crap.
Oh, yeah, right. Humble.
I don't need to make it bad; it's already terrible. But yeah, so it was really interesting to hear you talk about you were taking a playwriting class, and for those who know your music, it feels very whimsical, full of fantasy. What's your relationship with playwriting and just writing in general, and how has that influenced your what's your relationship with writing in that context, and how has that influenced your writing in the musical context?
My relationship with story is one that it started when I was in the second grade. I had this silly idea to make a play adaptation of the Toy Story, uh, and I got really excited about that as a second grader. And I'm not attached at all to like a specifically playwriting. I don't do that at all anymore. But just the story in general, there's just some part of me that gets most inspired by a character changing, a story being surprising. And I realized a long time ago that I just love a great story as much or more than a great song. And that's all. So I think that it just worked into my songwriting process just by virtue of anything you really love and admire happening to traipse into that. And I felt like a lot of my songs sort of gravitating around Brooklyn and New York generally in that period just kind of naturally happened. Spinning off of the song My Brooklyn, I started thinking of the verses as being different characters.
Mhm.
And like the verse of I think this one looks like a trip and all that stuff. I was imagining all the lines being like the internal monologue of a different character in an art gallery. And from there, like those were almost like cameos to larger characters in other places. And probably no one else like detects that or thinks about it. And that's okay. Like I don't, you can get blue in the face, like thinking about trying to explain a story to somebody else because there's songs and I don't know that anyone's really hearing it, but at least for me internally while I'm writing that is inspiring. And my relationship these days outside of the songs, I'm writing stories generally, and that's fulfilling. I'm not really putting that out there yet, but it's kind of it's on a front burner now, but slow going and not something I'm putting out there outside of them being kind of quietly in the songs, I guess.
And let's talk a little bit about your early influences. Where did that passion for storytelling come from? I know on a musical level, you were raised surrounded by classical music. I heard that your grandfather was involved in concert planning. I'm curious to learn more about your earliest influences with both the storytelling side and the music side, and how those two things sort of came together.
Cool. Yeah. I think that uh, I'm not actually sure where to pinpoint the start to feeling really passionate about story outside of um, some kind of like a random smattering of things. Something that's coming to mind is seeing a production of La Boheme as a kid, and 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 actually, of all things, Les Mis. Uh, I'm not even into musical theater like as an adult, but when I was like 14, understanding that okay, there are all these epic songs in this thing in this musical, and they're being there to serve the story. I found that fascinating, and there's an entire world, of all these French revolutionaries and everything. And I think imagining the story before ever getting to see that show, like as an early teenager, just by listening to the songs, that was inspiring. And then childhood friend convinced me to be in a show um, when I was 12 or 13. So I started acting. And I think, yeah, just the feeling of being in a story or being a part of a production, making a story. I think there might be nothing more magical than that feeling of like being backstage and knowing that you're entering this other world that we're all pretending together is real for a while. I think that's where it comes from. I mean, I could rattle off or try to rattle off movies and whatnot. But I think that's probably where it comes from. Is it just feels magical to me.
Yeah.
Just the act of sharing ideas and what we think about as humans in this, in the medium of story, regardless of specific medium.
Yeah. On the music front, in terms of your sound, there's this wonderful fusion in your music between bouncy synth pop, if you will, and also more ornate and classical elements. You've mentioned that harmonically, that's where your heart lies, regarding your classical influences. How did you arrive at this specific sonic blend, and in particular, how has it evolved as you've developed your sound?
Well, I think it happened like pretty organically, not in a very smart, intentional way. I think I just was playing a lot of piano as a teenager, and I made a few albums like No One Will Ever Hear that are all Baroque pop or orchestral indie, whatever you want to call it. And it was basically indie rock with strings and horns, and sometimes flute or an opera singer doing bizarre like 4-part harmonies in the background. I had a lot of fun, like just messing around. I was living in Bloomington, Indiana, making this really silly Baroque pop stuff that no one really will hear in various bands. And I think it was only just not more synth pop because I just didn't know how. That was all. Yeah, it wasn't some cool like intentional calculated progression. It was more like, oh, slightly older Loren knows how to use Ableton Live. And I mean, I couldn't really tell you how to use this box sitting behind me that you have here, but I like the sounds that they make. So doing it, with plugins um, like an Arturia plugin or something, messing around with some synths, just generally, yeah. I just love that sound because um, a lot of 80s stuff just really stuck in my head as a kid. A lot of like original synth pop stuff.
Yeah. On a deeper note, in interviews in the past, you've mentioned periods of mania and mental health challenges that have influenced your work. And you once said, through my experience with manic episodes, at the end there's always a shred of truth, even when I've imagined other things. How has music served as a way for you to process those things?
I think it hasn't. I don't know that it has. I mean, like I not to bat down away the question, but I think it's more. I'm sorry. Actually, can I hear the question again? I think I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, how has music served as a way for you to process these deeper emotional experiences that you've experienced in your life?
Yeah, I guess I have theories. I feel like I used to be more woo woo years ago, and I think that I don't have a working or some specific belief of where emotions or energies are kept. You call it, if you call it an aura or something. I think that energies do kind of stay around and float like little clouds in us or something. And I think any creative act can summon those and transmute them into something else. So I guess that's how I think of it, is that anything that's been really hard for you, or an inspiration that is a positive um, or inspired, a positive one. Um, I think that you're channeling those, and then sometimes it's just, I don't really, I don't really know. It could be just a neutral spontaneous thing, but
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Beyond Alibi's Ghosts, are there any live performances, collaborations, or other projects you're excited about in the future?
yeah, coming up. Finish up. I'm finishing up writing a new album right now. Starting to demo a bit, and I'm really excited about this one. I'm also writing a story. Um, and yeah, I'm excited to try and share that, both it's in scripted form, and I'm also writing it in prose so that I can more easily share it sooner. Um, assuming, that I don't. It's very hard to get a thing made outside of it being a little book maybe, but so yeah, just pushing forward story and a batch of songs, and the songs I'm putting less pressure on them to um, attach to characters or story. I'm just trying to just let them be songs because
Mm.
I feel like I got blue in the face from explaining like, oh, this album has this like these characters here in this story, and people just being like, oh, okay, cool, just like nodding. So that's where I am, creatively.
That's awesome, and we can't wait to check out the latest work when you're ready to release it. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us today.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
having me, John.
Cheers, man.
Yeah, cheers.